Renting versus buying, the age-old question. I'm Eddie, the tattooed realtor, here to give you my thoughts and ideas on renting versus buying. I took some time, thought about the different questions my customers have asked me throughout the years to give you the best insight I possibly can to help guide you in your decision making. Be sure to subscribe to my videos on YouTube and be sure to like and share. That'd be absolutely amazing. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below or text, call, and email. My information is in the description. So let's get started. Renting versus buying. I wrote down the first one is upkeep and maintenance. A lot of times when you rent a property, you don't really have to maintain anything, meaning, yeah, you gotta keep it clean and you gotta make sure that the trash goes out. But if something goes wrong, like let's say your refrigerator blows up for some weird reason, you probably don't have to be the one to replace it when you're renting the property. The landlord or the leasing community would be the one to do it. Of course, if you had something like go wrong in the property, I don't know, like let's say you're gonna paint or something like that, a lot of times that will fall the responsibility of the tenant. So you have to think maintenance. Do I want to put up with the maintenance required? Here in South Florida, obviously air conditionings are extremely important and you got to keep those up and in running condition. But if they fail and you're the homeowner, who's going to replace it? You are. You're going to have to come up with the money to replace that, as well as the time and the effort and the hiring and all that kind of nonsense. If you're the tenant though, and the AC goes out, you just simply put a phone call in and you have the landlord come out or they send somebody out and it's taken care of. A lot of times in leases though, when you sign a lease as a tenant, you definitely want to pay attention to the sections in the lease if you choose to go the leasing route, when it talks about the minimum amount required for the landlord to take effect in the maintenance repair. Meaning, a lot of times there's a paragraph in there that'll say something like this. A maintenance request must exceed the amount of $150 or X amount in order for it to be the responsibility of the owner. Meaning, any response or any inquiry you put in, that has to be over $150 in order for the landlord to take care of it. So pay attention to that paragraph. So definitely something to think about, the maintenance and upkeep. The next thing I started thinking about was the freedom to do what you want. What I mean by that is, let's say you want to paint your house a certain color, or you want to paint the interior a certain color, or you want to redo the flooring, or you want to, I don't know, knock out a wall, or if you want to bring pets into the home. When you're a tenant or you're renting, you're kind of restricted on certain things you're able to do because you're not the owner of the property. When you're the owner of the property, you bought the property, you're able to do pretty much what you please. Obviously, it has to be in accordance with the city or state or country guidelines, but nonetheless, you have more freedom to do what you want to the actual aesthetic appeal of the property. So definitely something to think about when it's renting versus buying. How free do you want to be in making the home your space? Now, I'm not talking necessarily about interior modifications like painting, but some owners are kind of particular in not allowing their tenants to do that. So something to consider. Not only do you have to consider the maintenance, upkeep, and the freedom to do what you want, you're paying someone else's mortgage. Meaning you are pouring money into a mortgage that you do not own and you're paying for somebody else. I'll give you a simple example. Just a little while ago, a customer of mine bought a home for $175,000. They went 3.5% down, and the mortgage amount that I saw was right around $1,200 a month. Now, that was for a single family home that I know could be rented out probably between $1,600 or $1,500 to $1,700 a month. That means that owner is going to make the additional $500. It's a business, but you need to be aware of that when you're considering renting versus buying. Are you willing or do you want to pay someone else's mortgage? If you do, totally cool, but just be aware of that. You know, you're pouring more money into someone else's asset, but we're going to talk about assets a little later. The next thing I started thinking about was not being locked down to one place or in one place. Many times when I talk to tenants or renters, they like the freedom and the ability to move to different states, different cities, different locations, different styles of properties because they don't own it. Because the lease term, 9 times out of 10, is going to be for about a year. That means you have to be there for a year while you're living in it. But once that year is up, you can obviously move on to something else. So you got to ask yourself, do you want to stay in the same spot for, extended period of time, or do you want the ability to move? Now, move often. Now, I'm not talking if you buy a property, you're stuck there for life, like you're buying your own grave. I'm just saying that's going to be a little more difficult if you want to move to a different city and you own the property. Because you might have to rent a property wherever you move, you might have to find tenants, you might have to get another mortgage, you might have to sell the property. It's just different, but it's definitely something to consider when it's renting versus buying. The next thing I started thinking about was building an asset, like I previously mentioned. A lot of times people don't think about this just because they're ignorant to it, because they don't know. An asset is something obviously worth something, like money obviously, and you're building into it, and it's going to help you in the end, hopefully, because with real estate you're supposed to make the purchase on the buy, meaning you're making money on the buy because you're buying it for a lower price than what it's really worth, because there's equity already in it. It's another video topic, but you have to think about building assets. When you're just paying into something to continually pay, kind of like a lease on a car, you never will own that car. Of course, you don't got to worry about the maintenance, but it's never going to be yours. So something to consider. Do you want to build an asset or not? Continuing on, dealing with associations. Now this one's extremely important if you're renting in a condo or a townhome or a single family home that has a homeowners or a condominium association. Those things can be a living nightmare to deal with, depending on the complexity of the association, the way they're designed, the governance, things of that nature. So when it's renting versus buying, ask yourself, do you want to deal with an association? Because if you're the renter or tenant, yeah, you're going to have to deal with the association when you're coming into the home, like moving in. Usually there's an application process, a fee, but you're not the one paying the association fee every single month. And those things can be as low as a couple bucks, as high as thousands of dollars a month, depending on the community in which you live. There are also things about memberships that are radically different because you're buying into a club or a golf course, so you want to consider that as well. So renting versus buying, how much do you want to deal with associations? Not only associations are something you have to think about, but the insurances. I wrote here renter's insurance versus mortgage insurance. When you're renting versus buying, or renting versus buying a property, how much of the insurance do you want to deal with? With renter's insurance, 9 times out of 10, you can just talk to your car insurance or your auto insurance, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. And those insurance policies really aren't crazy money because they're usually protecting personal assets, meaning things inside the walls, not the walls themselves. However, homeowners association or homeowners insurance, when you buy a property, 9 times out of 10 you have to have homeowners insurance because the bank wants to protect their money. So the homeowners insurance can be anywhere from, a couple $100 a year to thousands. I just had a customer of mine bought a house. They got quoted about $4,500 a year. So you can see a couple $100 versus $4,500 a year. That's a drastic difference. So you have to ask yourself, renting versus buying, do you want to take on that kind of payment? And last but not least, and this is kind of an overarching theme, is unpredictability in renting versus buying. I like to think that when you buy, yes, there is unpredictability, but the mortgage payment based on the, Save My Home thing here in South Florida, there are limits to how high your mortgage can increase. That depends on the type of the product you have and whether or not it's a variable rate or a fixed rate. There are things like that. So you have to keep that in mind, the unpredictability of that. Now, mortgage and homeowners insurance, things like that can increase, but usually they're predictable. Renters or tenants, that lease amount can go up, or the rental amount can go up astronomically with really no just cause, because from my knowledge, there's no way that that's protected. There's no rule or regulation on that, on protecting the amount of rent can go up. So those are my points. To recap, let's go through them real quick. Things to consider renting versus buying. Upkeep maintenance. Freedom to do what you want, meaning modify the space, make it your own. Paying someone else's mortgage. Not being locked down into one place, meaning you can travel more easily, move from place to place, because if you're renting versus buying, it's not impossible during buying, but it's going to be a little more difficult. Building an asset, dealing with the association, renting insurance, and of course the unpredictability of your rental amount versus, more of a predictable nature of mortgage or mortgage insurance or homeowners insurance. So this is Eddie, the Tattooed Realtor, bringing you these ideas and thoughts on renting versus buying. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to give it a like or subscribe for more awesome content to come very soon. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Or if you want to talk to me personally, by all means, feel free to text, call, or email. My information is below. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you have an easier time making a decision now whether or not you should rent or buy. I'll see you guys later.